All right, YouTube, welcome back to the Layman's Carpentry. Maybe it was the Layman's Carpenter. I can't remember. It's the first video. It's a mystery already. What my channel name is here. We're going to jump into the project I just started 2 days ago. It is a floating shelf for my den. Bit of a practice floating shelf, as this will be the kind of the precursor to floating shelves I'm going to be creating for my pantry and in some of our living spaces. So made this completely with birch plywood with some pine spacers in between. There's a lot of different videos on tell you how to make floating shelves. Some of them different ways of going about with how to do the jointery, but this seemed to work pretty well. We'll jump right into it here. I went with just straight 45-degree cuts. You can see that here. All these are joined just by there's 45-degree angle cuts, and I just glued and nailed these together with some finishing nails. The spacers are in between are just some pine blocks. I had some scrap pine blocks I had. Now for the bracket, some videos online they'll show them creating their own bracketry out of, again, just wood. But I decided to go with a metal bracket. This is something I got from a Studlock Ultra bracket, and quality steel construction. It's actually an American company. It does cost a little more than its Chinese counterparts, but I don't know. When it comes down to it, I'd rather support an American company if I can. So yeah, this will eventually get screwed into studs. And you can see this is nice because this thing has all these little holes, so you will never have a hard time finding a spot where you're going to connect with a stud with this bracket. These things each of these round pegs are 3/4 of an inch thick. So obviously my opening here in my floating shelf had to be, of course, 3/4 of an inch. I actually went just a tad bigger. It's one thing that with woodworking, it's sometimes a 1/6 of an inch is having that little play is very important. So make sure, like with this sort of thing, like you want to be a little bit on the bigger side as opposed to the smaller side. The last thing you want to do is have your bracket hung up to go to mount your shelf, and then suddenly it's too tight. It's the last thing you want. So you want to have a little bigger as opposed to a little smaller, because you can always wrap your pegs with a little tape to help fill that little void, and get it nice and snug. Obviously you can't do that in the reverse, otherwise you maybe have to drill. One thing nice about this Ultra bracket too, as long as you use 3/4 of an inch plywood, which is what I did. I used 3/4 inch birch plywood. It'll give you enough room to router a groove on the inside. That way, when you put your bracket in, it'll sit perfectly flush. Your shelf will sit perfectly flush with the wall. There'll be no bracket showing at all. Completely invisible. Which is the whole purpose of this. And getting these cuts right can be a little tricky. Getting those perfect 45-degree angles to come together perfectly. Don't worry if they don't. If they don't come together perfectly, you're going to be using a wood putty to fill the gap. And so I use this DAP plastic wood. It's a natural finish. I think it worked pretty well with the birch plywood. You can barely see the nail holes, which there are nail holes in here, but they're almost completely invisible. Let's see, you can see one right there. And I used the plastic putty on the edges too, but it's almost completely, the gaps are now almost completely invisible. So yeah, now we're going to be moving on to the staining phase. For the staining phase, I'm going with my tried and true Golden Pecan Varathane. I've tried a number of different stains from Varathane. I just, when it comes to staining plywood and pine for that matter, this is sometimes it's hard to get good results. The Golden Pecan seems to produce fairly good results. The darker ones, not so much. Gets a little blotchy. I also got a little of this pre-stain conditioner. Honestly, not entirely sure if it's totally necessary. Apparently, this helps with that blotchiness. Actually, you can see the image on the front shows kind of a unconditioned versus conditioned when it comes to the different how it's going to turn out with and without. But honestly, I've done staining with and without, and I go back and forth as to whether it's totally necessary. The Golden Pecan, I feel like no, not necessary. Maybe some of the darker ones, it's necessary. Again, I'm a little on the fence on whether it's totally needed. And then I'm going to finish up with a water-based polyurethane. Polyurethane is tricky. Water-based polyurethane is definitely easier to work with and easier to get a good finish. It is not, you can get a good finish, but it's still not going to compare to your oil-based polyurethanes. Just because, but the oil polyurethanes is so much harder to get a perfect finish. You have to control for dust a lot more, and cleaning brushes is a pain. And but yeah, so I'm opting for, because it's just a shelf, I'm opting for the easier route. I'm just going to go with the water-based. You have to apply a lot more coats with the water-based too. Another one of the downside effects, but again, a lot easier to work with, a lot easier to apply. Don't have to worry about dust, little dust nibs on your finish quite as much. They seem to sand out between coats a lot better. So yeah, let's. I'm gonna get that going, and then we'll catch up and see what the finished result looks like. All right.